Now, Dr. Templeman, you were initially very skeptical about the mangosteen. What changed your mind?
Well, I lived in the third world for a number of years, and I think my mind was open to the idea that there were botanical solutions to problems that perhaps, North American medicine didn't have. I had seen cures of cancer, for example, and diabetes that really were quite remarkable, but this was before I was a doctor. And so when I became a doctor, I think my mind closed a little bit as I went through medical school, and I was directed, like most allopathic physicians, to the idea of using drugs for everything. However, I learned about the limitations of drugs early on. And so when I saw what the mangosteen could do, I was curious but skeptical because it had so many applications. And I wondered, how, even with the variety of xanthones that are in there, how could it possibly affect so much in the human body? So I moved forward because I don't think that, the idea that it's too good to be true is a reason not to try it. And so I did move forward, and I must admit that my skepticism ebbed as I saw the results across the spectrum of health problems. And so I was convinced. In fact, I had a patient who came in to see me. I was practicing in southern Georgia. And this gentleman came in to see me, and he was in bad shape. He hadn't been able to speak properly for about 3 days. He'd had difficulty getting in fluids, and he hadn't been able to eat at all. And when I examined him and looked inside his mouth, it was so red that you would have believed that some caustic chemical had been in there, or a blowtorch. And I examined him, but I could not figure out what was wrong with him. I called my partner in, who examined him with me, and had no other ideas than I had. I then sent him post-haste to a hospital to see a specialist, an ear, nose, and throat specialist, who, using fiber optic tools, was able to look down his trachea, his breathing tube, and his esophagus, his swallowing tube, and called me and told me that that inflammation I could see in his mouth continued down as far as he was able to see with his fiber optic tools. So we did not know what was going on. The doctor up there proposed a number of tests, and this fellow, Billy, refused the tests. He actually came back to my office, and I had had a chance to consult with the specialist. In fact, I'd even consulted over the phone with a second specialist. And we decided to treat him with prednisone, which is perhaps the strongest anti-inflammatory drug that doctors will normally use. And we gave him the prednisone. But after 3 days, he was actually worse. He would not come back into my office, but I did see him at the back of my clinic. And I told him at that time, when he refused to take any other medication, I said, Billy, I have an herbal preparation here. I called it jungle juice because I didn't know what it was at the time. But I gave it to him, and I said, swish it around in your mouth 3 times a day, hold it, and then swallow, because it has been shown to have anti-inflammatory properties. Now, I did not know what to expect, but in a couple of days I was really worried about Billy, and I called his family, and they said to me, oh, he's back at work. So I brought him back in, and when I examined him again and was able to look at his mouth, even though there had been some changes in his hands and in his feet, his mouth was completely clear. The inflammation that we had not been able to change using the most potent medication we had on hand was gone. And I thought, that's a pretty good example of nature outstripping science.
Dr. Templeman, that was just a remarkable account.